And one of the things that I think all of us need to be aware of is this trend toward our communities having an at-home aspect. You know, my own community, Westminster Canterbury on Chesapeake Bay, has an at-home aspect, started in January of 2013. And the thing about it is that the residents were not told that this was going to happen. And I just happened to be going through the organizational chart in the library, and I found this statement to the state that they had started a limited liability company. They had formed a limited liability company, Westminster Canterbury at Home, in January, and I discovered it in August. And I said, what is this? What's going on? And, you know, it was, I think it was a little bit embarrassing for the administration, because in 2012, they had told us that our home health department was now going out into the community to deliver home health services for people who were in their homes throughout the whole Hampton Roads area. And that's Virginia Beach and Norfolk and Chesapeake and Suffolk. And so they thought that the fact that I knew this meant that I knew that they had formed a limited liability company, which I didn't. I knew that they had done this to bring revenue in from Medicare. The home health team goes into a home after people have been hospitalized, and they deliver the home health services, the rehabilitation services, the nursing services, the home care that they need, that's paid for by Medicare, as long as Medicare pays. Now then, when we had our meeting on Monday, we learned that let's see, I'm trying to think of the name, Bailey's Crossroads. Help me out, Beth.
Goodwin House.
What is it?
Goodwin House.
Goodwin House. They have two Goodwin houses, one in Alexandria and one in Bailey's Crossroads. And we learned that they had just formed a home health company. It's Goodwin House at Home. Very different from ours. The one that they formed, people pay an entrance fee for, and they get access to some of the services within Goodwin House, and Goodwin House gives them certain services in their home. Now that's really kind of a very different concept. Jack Matheson was talking about the leading age peak meeting in spring. And a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, the meeting was devoted to at-home services. And it listed, actually there were two communities that had at-home services that they described in detail. And I printed out all of the slides that accompanied these two presentations. And then somebody else talked about, you know, how many of these existed in the United States. And it said one in Virginia. So it's something I think that all of us need to be kind of aware of, that this is seems to be a trend that people are adopting in CCRCs. And that's about where we stand in Virginia, yes.
I just want to mention that in Florida, I think what you're referring to is it was called CCRCs Without Walls. And it was an idea that a couple of people had, and I think Milt may be able to speak on how we kind of jumped right on that and to find out exactly how it was going to affect the current CCRCs.
involve licensing and everything else, but the baby boomers don't want to move out of their current home, but they want to have the health care aspect.
So they pay an entrance fee just like the, yeah, okay.
I'm going to bring Joe Walton up because his community does that. Oh,
Yeah, we have it at Masonic Care too.
at Masonic here.
I have a question first.
All right.
G. Do you perceive care at home being a threat to?
I don't consider it a threat at all. But I don't understand, you know, this is a limited liability company, and I live in a corporation, and I don't understand the connection, the financial connection between the two. It isn't clear to me whether the revenue comes into the corporation or whether the limited liability company has its own separate books.
Thank you.
I'll just comment a little bit on our experience at Seabury. Seabury was instrumental in starting care at home programs. It's called Seabury at Home. And it provides services to individuals that want to stay in their home as long as they can, but they'd also like to have the benefits of on-campus living and access to health care when it's needed. And that's turned out to be very, very successful at Seabury. Among other things, it has helped boost our occupancy levels. They've been constantly near 100%, and part of that is the movement of people that have decided to leave their personal residence. It's time for them to come to the campus. They have access to a lot of the benefits that our on-campus residents have. They can utilize the fitness room. They come to the community to participate in a number of activities. It's a way to integrate into the community. And it is a very, very positive development. I agree with Gene that this is relatively new, but in my opinion, from all I've read about it, I think it's apt to grow and be very popular. Bottom line, my personal experience is that it's a win for everyone on both sides.
Thanks.
Joe, before you leave the podium, with your Seabury at Home program, do they have the same assurances of care that you have with your Type A?
Yes, yes,
Okay, and so they have access to the facility,
yes.
and so has that created a demand for, is there a limit to how much that can be expanded outside to ensure that the people who are resident still have access to the facility to the same degree?
There are no new limits imposed.
In Florida, there's certain restrictions.
Okay, and with yours, do they pay an entrance fee?
Yes, they have to pay an entry fee. They have to pass a physical exam. They sort of parallel the screening that occurs when residents are moving onto the campus.
Is there a limit in the proportion so that if you have, how many residents do you have there at Seabury?
We have an independent living about 220.
Okay, now if you had 1,500 continuing care at home people, is there any limit on that growth?
Well, it's a management issue. The healthcare facilities has to manage in such a way that residents that need access to a bed in assisted living or in skilled nursing, that it's going to be there available for them. Now, once in a while, I've lived in this community for almost 12 years in November, and I can recall only 2 or 3 instances where a resident could not be provided a bed in skilled nursing or assisted living because they were all filled up. In those circumstances, contractually, Seabury is obligated to move that resident into a like facility off campus. When that bed on campus is freed up, then the residents have moved back. Now, our healthcare facility also treats a number of private patients. They're not life care patients. They come there, they utilize the assisted living facility or skilled nursing facilities. They pay the daily rates for that. It's a fee-for-service arrangement. But our Vice President of Health Services has done over the years an extraordinary job of managing that so that we keep the number of empty beds at a minimum. When you have an empty bed, it's costing money. And if you have too many empty beds, it's going to raise your monthly fee. So they've done a good job of managing.
All right, I've got a couple of more questions, Joe. The continuing care at home is like a highly comprehensive long-term care insurance policy which requires an upfront payment just like you would pay into a single premium annuity. Do I understand it correctly?
Yes, right.
And does the capitalization of the entity providing that continuing care, is it the same level of capitalization that's required of an insurance company that would offer such a comprehensive long-term care insurance program?
That question is over my head. I can't answer it.
Okay, the answer is it is not. I can answer it for you. And I'll tell you that this is doing a business which has proven very problematic for the insurance industry and doing it on the cheap. And these are high-risk undertakings. They're great during the halcyon years. They're wonderful when things are going well. They're problematic when the trouble time arrives. And you've got to be prepared for that. And I just want to alert you that among those model laws, and I know they're hard to absorb, but we do have a continuing care at home statute that we're proposing. We're trying to encourage it, because we can see how having people on your waiting list have some sort of preferred relationship might be positive. So we've set an arbitrary limit. If that continuing care at home program becomes more than 25% of your revenues, it's now an insurance company and should be regulated as an insurance company. Right now, there's no regulation of this stuff, and they're arguing, well, we know this business, let us just fly and fly without a parachute.
In Florida, the second task force that I was on, there was...
John, why don't you come up to the microphone here?
In Florida, there was a shrewd entrepreneur who started to sell contracts for a continuing care at home. He had no facilities. His idea was to sell contracts and he'd then make arrangements for where people needed to be. We, the Residents Association, didn't like this. The providers didn't like this. And so we decided we should get something in the Florida law. Mills referred to 651, which is the magic number in Florida. And so we worked with the providers, and in fact, we got something in the law. The unfortunate part is partially what you spoke to, Jack. The percentage of continuing care home contracts, there is a percentage reduction, and I will admit I fought to keep it much lower than it was, which I lost on. It's almost a meaningless percentage because they can, John Knox Village could have too many, much more than we want, though they are considering of starting this. It basically is continuing care at home. It's a shame Dan's not here because Kendall, who's a CCRC in Philadelphia area, they have operations wherever, several places where there are small universities. They have one near Dartmouth, they have one near Ithaca College, they have one at Oberlin, and they have a couple others. they have been strong proponents of continuing care at home, and he probably, I'm assuming, he may know a great deal about this. According to the numbers that we have heard, because there's been a lot of discussion at John Knox Village about this concept, only 5% of the people who are continuing care at home ever move into the facility. Now, that's a number we've been given. That doesn't prove that it's true. It is people who are wealthy, do not necessarily live near the CCRC, and what they want is the protection of long-term care insurance. You can provide them transportation, you can provide them one medical examination a year, you can provide them all kinds of services if you're willing to contract to provide those services. There's no limit to it. I agree with Jack that there is some danger in it. But supposedly, with the baby boomers, not the ones who only have $10,000 a year, but the ones who are stockbrokers or hedge fund brokers and have a lot of money, they're willing to pay this money up front, because there is a upfront amount, and if they want to move to John Knox Village, then they've got to pay the entrance fee the time they want to move in. So they would become a normal buy-in to John Knox Village. Jack put his finger on the question, which there was tremendous discussion in the state of Florida. What if I need to go to the health center 12 years from now, and 12 of these CC at home people have taken my place? Well, supposedly we've been told that doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened. What's going to happen in 12 years, I don't know. It's a revenue producer for the management of a CCRC, which is why they think it's a good idea. You're completely correct. Gene is correct that it is growing. So it's something we need to be very much aware of.
I just add a couple of things. Gene's entity is in a separate corporation. That corporation is now an unlicensed insurance company without adequate insurance expertise or insurance advice, and they don't even utilize reinsurance, which anybody in the insurance company business knows. I've got a couple of things more to say. Most of these are being put together by outfits like the Third Age subsidiary of Clifton Larson Allen without actuarial input. They're pricing insurance without actuaries. They're using rules of thumb like John just threw out, 5%, some kind of number. Don't worry about it. The future will take care of itself. The revenue's here today. The executive salaries are here today. The bankruptcy's tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. To be in the insurance business, you have to be adequately capitalized, adequately regulated, and if an insurance company fails, the policyholders are protected from the bankruptcy and they're held harmless. And that's not the case with this. When these things fail, you're on your own. When a CCRC fails, your entrance fee is gone. You're on your own. And that's the problem. Now, I understand what you're saying. I had a friend who I warned him about Palo Alto because I knew about the problems there. Classmate from college. He's married to a woman I went to high school with. She was cheerleader, president, beautiful gal. I would have been scared to date her. But anyway, but they've been married now many years, and he bought a small apartment in Palo Alto that he doesn't intend to live in because he wants the Type A contract. He's willing to buy that resident. And that is the reason why many communities have moved away from Type A. They don't want non-residents buying apartments in their communities. So the continuing care at home does provide an alternative to that, which is an attractive one. But if you're in the insurance business, for God's sake, know what you're doing before you drive residents and the people who are depending on you into the circumstances of a bankruptcy. And that's exactly what's happening with Kendall at Home, which uses Bob Yee as our actuary, so I give them some credit for that. That's a problem throughout the industry. People want the revenue. The executives they're paid on a current basis, and the problems are deferred. That's a challenge we have to address.
Well, a couple things. Actually, John Knox Village did use an actuary. It happens, Clifton, Lawson Allen are their outside auditors, but they used an actuary. They required a marketing study. They required a feasibility study. And in Florida, number one, if we start one, it will be a wholly owned subsidiary of John Knox Village. It will be regulated by the Office of Insurance. And in Florida, they now must, if anybody else is going to start a continuing care at home, they must have a health center that is built. They must have a place where if somebody needs the facility, there is somewhere to go. And if it's a CCRC, there is a limit. As I said, I don't think it's an acceptable limit, but there is a limit. But it would be under the Office of Insurance Regulation. So at least Florida, or between Leading Age and us, we had enough wisdom to make sure we recognize it's an insurance policy.
Just have one more final comment on this issue. At the time Seabury launched its Seabury at Home program, I was on the board. And at that time, and it continues today, Bloom Shapiro was the independent auditor. Bloom Shapiro, and specifically Darrell, came to our board meetings regularly, reported on their assessment of the risk involved, made it clear at the startup that there is a risk involved. When you get only 2 or 3 residents or Seabury at Home residents signed up in the program, the worst case scenario is the day after the last applicant was signed up, he or she has a stroke and lives for 15 years. Clearly, there is a risk. Our board considered that. Among those seats on the board, one was occupied by an actuary from a major actuarial firm. The board was well aware of the risk, but viewing the track record and the strong management performance, looking back over 16 years, the board concluded it was a prudent risk. And as a result of that courage, we're benefiting it today. The entire community, those on the campus and off the campus. The bottom line, this is important. You should pay attention to it. But when you look at it, keep an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just one comment. At Westminster at Lake Ridge, without this kind of a program, once in a while we have situations where residents who are ill have had to go to other facilities for a period of time because there wasn't space in continuing care or the health center.
It happened with that outside.
And the debate continues.